Hidden beneath the rolling plains of modern Ohio lies a secret that defies time. A landscape shaped not just by nature, but by human hands. Behold the Great Serpent Mound, a colossal earthen effigy weaving through the grass, a silent sentinel from a forgotten era of North America. For centuries, this rich soil has guarded the remains of a civilization so sophisticated, it challenges everything we thought we knew about the past. These mounds weren't random. They were celestial maps, aligned with the stars and moons with mathematical precision and astronomical intent. This was the Hopewell culture, a vast trade network stretching from the cold Great Lakes to the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. They traded copper, obsidian, and rare shells, creating intricate art that rivaled the great civilizations of the ancient world. Every carved stone and engraved shell tells a story of a people deeply connected to the land and the mysteries of the cosmos. But by 500 AD, the fires of the Hopewell began to fade, leaving behind only these sleeping giants of earth and silence. In 1915, a man arrived to wake these giants, Dr. William C. Mills, a scholar driven by a hunger for truth and discovery. Armed with a notebook and a vision, Mills realized that every grain of sand held a piece of a larger, grander puzzle. To the world, these were merely hills. To Dr. Mills, they were the fingerprints of a lost American empire waiting to be understood. As the sun set over the Scioto Valley, he knew his journey into the heart of the past was only just beginning. The excavation was meticulous. Every inch of soil was measured, mapped, and sifted with surgical precision to preserve the context of the find. Then, a flash of green, a signal from the depths. Beneath layers of time, the first major artifact began to emerge from its grave. A necklace of carved copper beads, untouched for 1,500 years, gleaming once more in the morning light. In that moment, the distance between the ancient world and the modern day vanished. Dr. Mills was holding history itself in his hands. But progress brought peril. Modern farming and expansion threatened to erase these sacred sites before their secrets could be told. In the shadows of night, looters sought to strip the mounds of their treasures, caring little for the history they destroyed in their greed. Dr. Mills stood as a guardian, a bridge between the living and the long departed, protecting the sacred legacy of the Ohio mounds. As he peered into the deep chambers of the earth, he realized the story of the Hopewell was only just beginning to be told. Ohio, 1915. The Scioto Valley stretches out in a sea of green, hiding the secrets of a civilization long forgotten by time. For archaeologist William Mills, every handful of soil is a page of a story that the world is trying to rip out. As progress marched forward, the physical legacy of the indigenous people is being torn apart by the very tools of modern expansion. Artifacts that belong to the earth are instead ending up on dusty shelves, stripped of their context and their soul. But there are those who see the past not as a heritage to protect, but as a prize to be claimed. To men like this, history is a commodity, and the Scioto Valley is the ultimate warehouse. In the shadows of his study, he appraises what he cannot understand, valuing the silver and stone while ignoring the people who shaped them. But the earth is finally giving up its true secrets. Under Mills's careful brush, a sophisticated world begins to re-emerge. Grizzly bear teeth from the west and pearls from the distant south. This was no isolated tribe. This was a continental network. Lines of trade stretched across the heart of America, connecting the mountains to the sea in a web of sophisticated commerce. Yet, the prevailing narrative of the time refuses to credit the indigenous ancestors. Theories of Vikings and lost continents cloud the truth. Mills knows the truth is written in the craftsmanship of the copper and the precision of the mounds. He stands against the tide of bias, fighting to ensure these people are remembered for who they truly were, architects of a grand civilization. As night falls, the true scale of the discovery is revealed. A massive complex, hidden for centuries, now bathed in lantern light. Copper and ornaments glisten in the dark, a silent testament to a culture that honored its dead with unparalleled beauty. The Hopewell legacy is no longer a mystery to be exploited. It is a heritage to be honored. The valley finally speaks. In the late 19th century, the rolling plains of Ohio became a silent battlefield between scientific discovery and the greed of private relic hunters. William Mills, a man of quiet determination, watched the growing frenzy with a heavy heart, knowing the history of a civilization was at stake. His warnings were clear and desperate. If the authorities did not intervene, these ancient sacred sites would soon be stripped bare and lost forever. The destruction began under the cover of darkness. By dawn, the once regal mounds were scarred by the crude excavations of looters seeking a profit. Mills surveyed the wreckage, his shoulders slumping. To him, an empty hole represented more than a missing artifact. It was a stolen chapter of history. With weathered hands, he documented the devastation. Each entry in his notebook was a plea for preservation in an age of unchecked exploitation. Hope arrived when a local elderly farmer, weary of the looters' greed, led Mills toward a hidden corner of his ancestral land. Away from the main trails, a perfectly preserved enclosure remained. It was a rare chance to study the Hopewell culture in its original context. Then, the earth yielded a revelation. A stunning copper plate emerged, catching the afternoon light with the brilliance of a forgotten sun. Mills stared in awe. This was not merely the work of builders, but of profound thinkers, astronomers, and artists of the highest order. The depth of the engravings suggested a society with deep spiritual connections and a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos above. But news of the find traveled fast. In opulent libraries, men of wealth and influence prepared to claim the treasure for their private galleries. Mills refused to yield. He believed these artifacts were a public legacy, not a commodity to be bartered or hidden in a wealthy man's vault. The lines were drawn. As the sun set on the excavation, the struggle for America's past moved from the dirt into the shadows of power. Beneath the morning mist of the Scioto Valley, the earth holds secrets of a civilization that flourished centuries before the first European footprints. In 1915, archaeologist William Mills stood at the heart of this landscape, caught between the rigor of science and the weight of ancestral memory. To the local farmers, these mounds were obstacles to be leveled. To collectors, they were treasure chests waiting to be plundered for profit. But for the indigenous people watching from the periphery, these were not just archaeological sites. They were the sacred resting places of their ancestors. In the autumn of 1915, Mills sought a different path, sitting down with indigenous leaders to bridge the gap between science and oral tradition. Within that room, the leaders spoke of the earth and sky, sharing histories that have been passed down through generations long before the excavation. Mills listened intently. His pen moved across his notebook, capturing stories that the shovel could never reveal, shifting his perspective from object to humanity. As winter descended upon Columbus, Mills retreated to his library, surrounded by crates of artifacts and the heavy silence of scholarly duty. He mapped the complex trade networks and geometric precision of the mounds, documenting a sophisticated world that challenged contemporary biases. By early 1916, his manuscript was complete, a document that would ignite a fierce academic firestorm over the ownership of the past. In the prestigious offices of the East Coast, scholars debated through letters and newspapers, some hailing his work while others feared its implications. Mills held his ground. He knew the truth of what he had found, even as letters of skepticism arrived at his door. Spring brought him back to the valley, only to find the landscape scarred by indifference and the relentless march of modern progress. Mills walked through the looted sites, documenting the hollowed-out pockets where precious history had been stolen by those seeking profit. The sight of broken burials and disturbed soil was a visceral reminder of the fragility of heritage when disconnected from its people. Every empty pit represented a lost chapter of history, a voice silenced by the rush to expand and the refusal to remember. As the sun set over the mounds, Mills stood alone, a guardian of shadows in a race against time and cultural amnesia. His legacy remains a complex testament to the struggle to preserve what is sacred in a world that often only values what it can take. 1917. In the shadows of the Scioto Valley, a different kind of harvest was taking place, one fueled by greed and secrecy. While archaeologists sought to map the past, a thriving shadow market was systematically dismantling it, piece by priceless piece. For men like the collector, these weren't just artifacts. They were trophies of a vanishing world, kept far from public eyes. He carefully curates his stolen legacy, placing a delicate Hopewell effigy pipe onto a velvet-lined shelf with cold, calculating precision. In the muddy fields of Ohio, laborers found more than just soil. Mica cutouts and obsidian blades were spirited away into coat pockets. Small-time dealers gathered in Columbus alleyways, whispering of ancient treasures found under the cover of night, bypassing the law and the labs. The scale of the Scioto Valley excavations was immense, a landscape defined by mounds that held the secrets of 1,000 years. William C. Mills, the lead archaeologist, stepped forward. He expected a logistical hurdle, but he found a moral awakening instead. Inside a canvas tent, lit by the flickering glow of lanterns, a 2-day consultation began that would change the course of American archaeology. The work continued, but the methodology shifted. Scientific grids now shared space with small, traditional ceremonial offerings. Under Mills' supervision, the team began the radical act of reinterment, returning sensitive materials to the earth they had come from. This defiance of traditional practice sparked outrage among his peers. Mills stood his ground, choosing ethical collaboration over academic conquest. Yet, the shadow market remained. For every item saved, dozens more vanished into the cold, beautiful silence of private collections. The crime was not just theft, but the erasing of context. Without records, these objects lost their voice, becoming mere ornaments. Each piece removed was a tile pulled from a great historical mosaic, leaving a dark gap in the collective memory of the nation. By 1918, the Ohio State Archaeological and Historical Society was filled with cataloged fragments, a sterile testament to a complex era. Mills had secured a future for many artifacts, but the loss of the untraceable weighed heavily upon him in his final days at the site. He looked toward the horizon, where the shadow market continued its quiet work, a tragedy of heritage that would persist for decades. The legacy of 1917 was a bittersweet victory. It was the first step toward a future where indigenous voices would finally lead the way. The battle for repatriation had only just begun. The stolen past was waiting to be brought back into the light. In the early 1920s, archaeologist William C. Mills looked beyond the surface, seeking the truth of America's ancient indigenous civilizations. As nationalism surged across the country, the sophisticated history of the Hopewell culture faced a critical turning point in the public eye. Mills walked the great earthworks of Ohio, realizing these massive structures were not mere hills, but monuments to a complex society. His groundbreaking findings were finally ready for the world, rushing through the presses to challenge long-held prejudices about the past. Surrounded by his landmark publication, Mills knew that documenting these ancient sites was the only way to ensure their survival. The intricate copper plates and geometric designs captured the public's imagination, revealing a level of artistry previously ignored by many. But advocacy brought its own burdens as letters from across the nation arrived, some offering support and others reporting new discoveries. From simple farmers uncovering stone tools in their fields, the echoes of a lost world were resurfacing beneath the American soil. Despite the growing exhaustion of his fight, Mills remained determined to validate the legacy of those who came before him. Yet, not all interest was noble. Private collectors sought to hide away these treasures, keeping history behind closed doors for profit. The media began to take notice, questioning the ethics of private ownership versus the public's right to its heritage. In the shadows of private galleries, the most inconvenient truths were often crated away, shielded from the light of academic scrutiny. Mills took his battle to the halls of government in Columbus, seeking legal protection for the sacred sites of the Scayo Valley. He watched in horror as modern progress, fueled by steam shovels and industry, threatened to level centuries of history in an instant. Every site lost was a page torn from history. Mills meticulously recorded every detail, fighting for every inch of preserved ground. Standing over the valley at dusk, he contemplated the enduring spirit of the Hopewell people and the weight of his mission. For Mills, the truth of this sophisticated civilization remained brilliant and undeniable, a legacy that must never be forgotten or erased. The most powerful testimony Mills ever delivered came not in a published paper or a legislative hearing, but at a community meeting in a small town outside Chillicothe, Ohio. Local farmers, indigenous representatives, and a handful of historians had gathered in a church hall to discuss the future of a cluster of mounds on land that a developer was proposing to flatten for a housing project. Mills stood at the front of that room and spoke for 40 minutes without notes. He described what the mounds contained. He described what would be lost. He described the civilization that had built them, their trade, their art, their knowledge of the stars. When he finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then an elderly indigenous man stood up and said, simply, "He's telling the truth." The developer's proposal was defeated. By the mid-1920s, the network of scholars, indigenous leaders, and concerned citizens that Mills had been quietly building was beginning to function. Formal organizations were forming. Advocacy letters were arriving at state capitals with multiple signatories. Newspapers that had previously treated mound preservation as a niche academic concern were beginning to frame it as a genuine public issue. The shift was slow, but it was real. Mills had understood from the beginning that the battle to protect the mounds was not just a battle about archaeology. It was a battle about whose history counted, whose losses mattered, and what kind of country America was willing to be. That was a battle that required more than field notes. It required allies, and he had spent years making them. The copper plate that Mills had recovered in 1915 had become, in the years since, something close to an icon reproduced in textbooks, referenced in academic papers, copied in illustrations for popular magazines. It had come to represent the entire achievement of the Hopewell culture in a single object. The precision of the engraving, the distance the raw copper had traveled, the sophistication of the symbolic language it contained. Mills was glad of the attention it brought to the broader story, but he was also careful to remind anyone who asked that the plate was not the whole story. It was one artifact among thousands, each of them equally important. Each of them telling a piece of a civilization's story that could only be understood in its full context. An object without its context, he always said, is just a thing. Context is what makes it history. The collector had been operating with impunity for over a decade by the time a young journalist from Cincinnati began asking the right questions. The journalist had been tipped off by a dealer who had refused one too many suspicious transactions and decided his conscience was more valuable. The tip was specific: names, dates, the approximate contents of the private collection. The journalist spent 6 months following the trail before he had enough to publish. When the article appeared, it described a collection assembled almost entirely through the exploitation of unprotected archaeological sites. Purchased from looters, acquired through intermediaries, documented with deliberately vague provenance. The collector's name was attached to every paragraph. He read it over breakfast and reached for his lyre. The article detonated across the archaeological community like a charge of dynamite. Mills had known for years that private collections of this kind existed. What was new was the public attention. the specific named accountability being brought to bear on a practice that had previously operated in comfortable darkness. Scholars who had stayed silent about the provenance of objects suddenly found themselves being asked to take positions. Museums that had quietly accepted donations of dubious origin were reviewing their records. The collector's lawyer issued a statement describing his client as a passionate advocate for cultural heritage. Mills read the statement and did not respond publicly. He had learned, over many years, that some arguments were not won with words. They were won with evidence. The legal confrontation that followed the journalist's article was long, expensive, and ultimately unsatisfying for everyone involved. The collector retained the bulk of his collection, arguing successfully that existing law did not require him to prove legitimate provenance for objects acquired earlier. Mills testified twice in related proceedings, carefully, factually, without editorializing. His testimony established the significance of what had been lost, the documentary record, and the full story of the Hopewell people. He won no convictions, but the testimony was entered into the public record, which Mills believed was more durable than a single verdict. While the legal proceedings dragged on, the advocacy work continued. Mills, now in his late 50s, was traveling more than ever, speaking at universities and attending legislative hearings. He had grown in his understanding of what this work required over the years. By the late 1920s, he understood himself to be a guardian of a record that was being actively destroyed. The Ohio State Archaeological Society mounted a major public exhibition of Hopewell artifacts in 1928, drawing visitors from across the country. He watched their faces as they stopped in front of the copper plate and the mica cutouts shaped like human hands. He watched them understand, perhaps for the first time, that what had been here before them was extraordinary. The 1930s brought economic depression. Funding for archaeological work dried up, and the protective network around the sites became even thinner. Cash-strapped farmers, desperate for income, were vulnerable to collectors offering cash for objects from their land. He watched the losses accelerate in his documentation notebooks with a specific kind of grief. In 1933, Mills achieved the passage of a state-level preservation ordinance in Ohio, providing legal protection for documented sites. It was imperfect legislation, but it existed. It was law. The mounds could no longer be legally destroyed. When the governor signed it, Mills was not in the room. He was in the field, doing the work. The camera pulls back, showing the vastness of the preserved landscape of the Great Serpent Mound at dawn. The dust of history often obscures the faces of those who shaped it. In the quiet of his study, William C. Mills reflected on a lifetime. By the 1930s, the field of archaeology was beginning to grapple with its own foundations, questioning the ethics of excavation and ownership. In classrooms and field sites, the legacy of the Scioto Valley began to shift from mere discovery to a complex narrative of stewardship. The Scioto Valley, a landscape defined by ancient earthworks, standing as silent monuments to a sophisticated civilization that many had yet to fully recognize. But for the private collectors of the era, these artifacts were prizes to be kept, symbols of prestige rather than pieces of a living history. Slowly, the contents of these private rooms moved into the clinical halls of the University Museum, where the fight for provenance began. Mills found himself caught between the old world of acquisition and a new era of accountability, speaking carefully to a public hungry for answers. Today, those same halls tell a different story. The focus has shifted from the finders to the rightful keepers of these ancestral treasures. Visitors now walk through a space where indigenous voices are no longer silent, but integral to the display of their own heritage. Every object, like this copper plate, carries the weight of a civilization and the scars of a struggle over who gets to tell its story. Journalists and researchers continue to dig through the paper trails, uncovering the complex web of how these artifacts were moved and traded. Across the country, museums face a reckoning. What was once seen as preservation is now often viewed through the lens of restitution. The conversation has reached the national stage, forcing institutions to confront uncomfortable truths about their collections. In the shadow of the mounds, a new generation learns that history isn't just in the ground, it's in the hands of the people. For the elders, this is more than an academic debate. It is a journey of pride, grief, and the reclamation of a stolen legacy. When the stories of the past are told by those who truly know them, the landscape of history finally begins to heal. As the sun sets on the Scioto Valley, the artifacts remain, not as relics of the past, but as symbols of a living future. Walk through any modern museum with a significant Hopewell collection, and you will see something that would have been unrecognizable in Mills's era. The labels have changed. They no longer describe the artifacts as the products of a mysterious or vanished people. They name the cultures. They describe the trade networks, the ceremonies, the knowledge systems that produced these objects. They acknowledge the living descendants of the people who made them. They note, often, the complicated histories of how specific objects came to be in the museum's possession. These labels represent an enormous shift. Mills spent his life pushing toward that shift. He did not live to see it complete, but the direction was set. Mills spent the last years of his life in a quiet house near the Scioto River. He had outlasted most of his colleagues and critics. The field notes from his decades of work filled multiple archival boxes, a record of methodical, tireless, carefully documented labor that researchers still consult today. He had not saved every mound. He had not stopped every theft. He had not resolved every tension between science, community, and heritage. But he had established that the work was worth doing, and that the civilization deserved the full attention of history. Today, the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park in Ohio protects over 1,000 acres of earthworks that have survived centuries of threat. Visitors walk the perimeter of geometric enclosures that were built with mathematical precision 2,000 years ago. Interpretive signs explain the trade networks, the ceremonies, the astronomical alignments. Indigenous cultural advisors help shape how the story is presented. The copper plate that Mills recovered in 1915 is housed in a climate-controlled archive, available for study and reproduced in textbooks around the world. It was saved, imperfectly and at great cost, by scientific rigor, indigenous advocacy, legal persistence, and the refusal of people to let the past be stolen. The story of Dr. William C. Mills and the Ohio Mound Builders is not only a story about the past, it is a warning about the present. Right now, archaeological sites are being destroyed by looting, development, and neglect. Objects are passing through shadow markets into private collections. Living communities are still fighting for recognition of their ancestral heritage against institutional indifference and legal frameworks that lag generations behind. The same forces that Mills faced in 1915 are still operating today. The work he began is unfinished until the past belongs to everyone. The Scioto River still moves through Ohio the way it always has, quiet, unhurried, indifferent to the centuries of argument. The mounds that survive stand in the late afternoon light, patient and enormous, shaped by human hands that understood the relationship between earth and sky. They are records of a civilization that was sophisticated, connected, and fully human. They were dismissed, looted, and nearly erased. And then, piece by piece, they began to be reclaimed. That reclamation is the real story. It is the work of bringing history back into the light. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, drop a comment, and turn on notifications. History is never finished talking.